Been an artist. I went to school for art, but I never really did watercolor. So I'm pretty new to it. I've only been doing it for maybe 4 years or so. I have kind of taken all rules and broken them because I'm not formally trained at all. So I'm kind of an outsider in the watercolor world, I guess you could say. So I kind of clung on to the birds because coming from other artists and from people buying my art, that's what they liked. I do still love to do all the other stuff that she mentioned, acrylics, printmaking, drawing. So I do a lot of other stuff, but the watercolor birds have seemed to keep me busy, just as far as being able to sell stuff and keep stuff at the artery with Leonard. And so I'm up there if you ever are at Front Street. So I'll just give you kind of a rundown of my supplies. Some people like completely saturate it and then lay it flat and tape it down. So I don't really do that. I found my own way to do things. With the heavy body paper, I found I can use the tape and it won't tear as much, and it also won't wrinkle as much. And since I'm not doing so many details in the paint itself, it works for me. I also found that this tape, I know it's kind of funny because it's a ruler, but I can also measure things while I'm taping it up. It has never torn my paper ever. It's at Michael's. So, and I get most of my things at Michael's or Hobby Lobby, and the Hue House too, for maybe bigger projects, or if I want to do something nicer, I'll buy their paints. But for the most part, I just also use this cheap $5 palette. It's still in the professional section at Michael's, but it is kind of like teetering on maybe kids paint or something. So I don't know that it's professional grade, but I love it and it gives me the bright colors. And that's what my work is all about, the bright colors and the whimsy, kind of almost abstract expressionism in a sense, but then adding beaks and legs to make it relatable. It's kind of where it goes a little bit. So these are my favorite. I have experimented with the core paint too, and it just gives such a different texture that it's so different, and I really love them. So I use them sparingly. I usually do them with larger sheets or larger watercolors. So I did pre-prep a few things, and this is kind of how I do it. I just kind of measure to make sure everything's straight. And sometimes I'll use the full size of the paper to so I don't have to do any measuring. And again, you can see on some of my stuff, I just do little hints of watercolor. Another reason I started doing watercolor, I was doing canvas paintings for a long time, and those take up a lot of room, a lot of room. So you can see if I had, I don't know, 50 canvases, how long would it take me to bring those in? But you can see how much art I have here that, you know, it's just in a little stack. And so since I work from home and I just work out of my living room, it saves so much room. And that's a big reason why I kind of started doing watercolor as a medium. And it's just really fun to do. So I do other stuff too. It's not only the little birds. I've done more realistic looking things, but again, it's not, doesn't speak to people, I think, as much. And sometimes I'll throw in a little cat. And you guys are free to look through this stuff later. I did a strawberry for the Strawberry Festival. So I do a lot of different things other than the birds, but I am going to show you how I do the birds. And being from Yellow Springs, you might or might not know where that's at. It's right downtown. It's
The wind.
yeah, it's like the little octopus building, I call it. It's kind of, but and again, I do other things too, drawings.
So you
and
can join our society and submit that for the June show.
okay, yeah, yeah. So I just wanted to show you examples of other things that I've done. Yeah, do you have a question? So I am part of the artery at Front Street.
Okay.
I do a lot of indoor markets, especially during Christmas time. I have an indoor market I'm going to this next month, so I'll be one of the artists there. Festivals sometimes, and then with the memberships around Dayton, like the Dayton Society of Artists, the Contemporary. I have stuff at their gift shop if you're ever at the Contemporary. So just kind of everywhere, little spots. I found I never really had much traffic on my website, so I just deleted that. I have more traffic on Facebook. So that's where you can find me if you're interested. And I brought cards too. Yeah. And you guys, yeah, definitely feel free to look at anything you want. So I guess I can go ahead and get started. I wrote little notes, so I have to put my glasses on. Yeah, so also I wanted to mention this is a technique that I think anyone could pick up. Not just someone that's experienced, but even like kids. It might not look like mine, but it's an easy enough technique that I think even kids can pick it up. I also brought some other little things that I kind of do. I buy these artist trading cards and I make little samples, kind of like color samples of what it might look like bigger, and that helps a lot. Almost like pre-sketching something, because I don't sketch anything. It's just I go right onto the paper without pre-sketching. Even with the contour line drawings, I don't sort of like sketch things out. I do the watercolor and then I draw over the watercolor. So for the ink that I use the Micron archival ink pens. There are lots of different sizes, and I go for the smallest size, which is 001 or 02. The bigger sizes are like 05. Those are the bigger ones. I actually learned about these pens because my brother, he's an archaeologist, and he has to use these pens. And he left some at my house, and I decided to try them. I had been looking for a pen that wouldn't run in watercolor, because it's water, it's gonna make the ink just spread. These do not spread. You could draw whatever you want with the ink, go over it with as much water as you want, and it won't go anywhere. So it's a fun technique, if you want to kind of start to try layering things. That's or mixed media or something. That's always a fun thing. I like the smaller square pads just because they fit so nicely in these little acetate bags, where if I'm at the artery or something, I can just have these out, unframed, original art, and people can pick their own frames, because a lot of people buy the frame too and not just the art. So it's just another way to kind of sell things without having to frame them with the acetate sleeves. So but these I get at Hobby Lobby, and these I get at the Hue House, and I can't support them enough. They're really nice people and they have a great variety. So. They're doing good. They will order things for you if you have special requests. So, and they're really nice people. They have workshops there a lot. Which I took a lino cut workshop for free. So you can't beat that. And then the bigger paper, I tend to go for big pads of paper. That way I can cut it down to the size that I want for my frame. But if they don't have any, I'll just buy smaller. But I tend to go for the bigger paper. And so I'll go ahead and get started. And like I said, I have all my papers already kind of planned out. And I have different sizes of brushes, although I always tend to stick with this kind of medium size. And I usually, well, sometimes I'll pick 2 to 3 colors. Other times I will just open up my little thing and literally just go down the line and use every single color and kind of not worry about anything. You know, it's just, it takes the stress away. I don't have to worry what it looks like. I have more paper, and so it's just really fun for me also. And so I'm just gonna, I guess, start doing that. I'm gonna get my paint wet. I usually just run it underwater, honestly, but I figured for this I would kind of just bring a little spray bottle. So once I have it all wet, I'll start with this little kind of sunset first. So I'll use sort of that medium-sized brush again. Again, I have 4 different sizes, and these are my favorite ones. Kind of 2 smaller and 2 bigger, but I like the bigger. And then I'll just pick the color I want. If I want blue at the top, I just go in. I don't pre-wet the canvas at all. And then I just keep adding water. If it becomes wrinkled, that's okay. I'll just flatten it later. Again, it's kind of like no rules here. What's that?
I say you paint with a band.
Yeah.
Well,
So that would be the first color, and then the next one I'll use this pink. And again, I like these bright colors. They just make me happy. So I know that, trust me, I know there's a whole science behind color and getting shadows, but this is not what you need for this project. It's just more about creating more than anything and expressing. And I'll do orange next. And again, I don't care where the water goes. The drops can go anywhere. It is okay by me. And then at the bottom, I'll do yellow. I even brought a brand new one for you guys, so it's not all crazy looking like that one. And then usually, this tape is great, but yeah, you still need to let the water dry before you take the tape off. Clearly, you guys probably know that. And someday I might be in one of your classes, because if I ever want to keep continuing. So that's kind of what I do with the watercolor. I let it drip and dry however it wants to. Once it's all dry, then I can go over it with the micron ink. It does ruin these pens, I'll be totally honest with you. So I have to buy a lot. Kind of like when a Sharpie gets wet, it just will never work again for some reason. So that's kind of what happens with these when I go over the watercolor with the ink. But you could also try a different kind of But if you wanted to do an ink drawing first and go over it with watercolor, there will be no kind of bleeding at all with the pen.
Are you inking it when it's still wet?
Sometimes.
Sometimes?
Yeah. It will bleed a little bit if you do that while the watercolor is still wet. And it's not great for the pen either. So I would suggest just make sure everything's really dry. Or if you ink first and then put the watercolor on top, then you don't have to worry about bleeding. But if one is wet in any way, you'll probably get some bleeding a little bit. So next I'm gonna do something more like this one up here, and I'll do it on this bigger sheet. And again, I'll pick like 2 or 3 colors so they don't look muddy. The colors can tend to look muddy. Speaking with artists, you guys all know that. So I kind of try to keep the color palette pretty simple. Unless I'm doing the tiny birds, then I can just use any color and every color. So I don't know, what colors do you guys like? I like bright. Turquoise. Okay, so I'll do some turquoise and maybe pink and purple. So usually I just add these bigger birds in first, and I give them a little tail. And then I might go in with the second color and just add a little drop and just let it do its thing. So it's not really a specific way I want things to look usually, other than the shape. And that's pretty much kind of like an oval, really rough edges. They don't have to be straight. And then a little tail. Sometimes I throw in bird or cats. So you have to like really pay attention, because occasionally I'll have kitties in there just for fun. And then again, go in with the second color. Sometimes I'll do a third. I'll put yellow in with this also. So I'll go around, I'll fill in all the big birds first. And it doesn't matter how many you do. I want to leave enough room for all their little legs. But other than that, it's pretty much, that's it. And once I get all of them filled in, then I usually add, I let everything dry, and I'll usually add the smaller ones and then sort of the medium-sized ones. So, and it's neat just to see the watercolors mixed together too. It's always different. They're never the same, even though you might have the same idea. I get requests sometimes, like, I don't see any, pink birds. Can you make one with pink birds? So, and a lot of times people buy these for their children, which, I'm okay with that. I was a preschool teacher for 15 years, so that's where all of my creative energy went for 15 whole years. And I didn't do any art, none. But I did it with the kids. And I'm still friends with some of those parents, and they tell me, oh my gosh, I miss your art projects with my kids. They don't get it now. But not every art teacher can be a preschool teacher, and I understand that. Not every artist can be a preschool teacher. Two totally different things. So once I feel like I have enough of the bigger ones in, then I'll start to add the smaller ones. And a lot of times I make sure they go off the page. So when I peel up the paint, the tape, I'll get that edge still.
It doesn't bleed through.
under?
Sometimes I found with this particular tape and my technique, I have never had much bleeding. Maybe like the occasional little blotch, but nothing that I can't sort of pretend it's part of the picture anyway. And that's the worst feeling when you know, want a straight line and go to peel it and you've worked so long on something and then you have this big splotch. But just experimenting and not having this certain idea of paper and tapes that I need to use and watercolors that I have to use, I was able to just kind of experiment and do things that maybe aren't so traditional. And I've kind of found what works for me and my style. And so I'm sure that I was put into a class or something, it would be like, you're doing it all wrong, but that's okay. And but I'm not in a class like that. But if I ever was to, I would probably learn a lot. And so I just keep going like that, and I'll do a few of the really small ones. Those tend to be just solid colors a lot of times. And I usually just use the shape of the brush also to make the marks. It really is just pressing down and putting the exact shape of the brush onto the paper. And then again, if it warps and bleeds, and I'll worry about that later. I'm not too worried when it comes to that. So I wanted to just kind of show you guys that technique. I did bring a finished one already, which it's not really finished, but after I did all the big ones and the little ones, I used purples and blues. Then I would, you know, take my tape off, like you guys know, and I've never had a problem with this tape. My husband's like, why is there tape all over our wall? Because I save it. It's my mother and me, I think. I don't know, but I'll save it and it'll just look like that all over my wall. So just tape everywhere. But I do reuse it too. And if those little bleeds of the other color get into it, well then that's okay too. And so once I have all the tape off, then I start to add all the little legs and the beaks and the eyes, which can be the fun part, but also the tedious part, because that's a lot of little eyes to put in. And I usually find my smallest one, and I can kind of use the different ones to show you. So this is the smallest. It's 005, which means it's the tiniest brush or pen you can get. And the beaks are just lines, the eye's a dot, and the leg is like a V shape with a spiral at the end. I used to do like really, I would do each little claw, but I stopped doing that. And then the bigger ones, you'll be able to tell the difference, are really kind of big. So they definitely give a different look. I tend to go for the smaller ones just because I like how it looks. But you can really do it any way you want. Just keep adding all those little legs and eyes, and I'll even do a cat for you guys. This one looks like a good cat shape. And this kind of came from the idea that, I don't know if you've ever just sat, it was me in school half the time when I was in school. You just sit and stare and you can see shapes, see things in shapes, kind of like clouds. You can see different things in the clouds. That's kind of also where the idea came from a little bit. So my cats usually are just whiskers and a nose. So you'll catch those every once in a while. Not in all of them, but some of them. And then I make sure that the legs fill up all the area. So I've even done legs that are straight down in circles. So it's just really fun and charming, and no rules to it, and you get lots of reactions from these if you guys ever try this style at home. So yeah, that's kind of that style of painting. So and then again, I would fill everything in, but I won't sit here and do that to you guys. So the same thing with this one, I would go back in, peel all the tape, and then put the legs, the beaks, and the eyes in. And that can be really fun. And so since this one's almost dry, yeah, absolutely. I'll go ahead and take the tape off this one. And again, also this tape is super cheap. It's like $2 a roll. Where if you buy artist tape, it can be sometimes $10 to $12 for a roll of artist tape. And that's kind of a lot. Masking tape I've tried also. It's a little sticky and it pulls at the paper and it kind of rips the paper. They don't just have this ruler type.
You see, you get that
at Michael's.
Oh, right.
Michael's. And it's not in like the artist section or the paint, like the professional artist section. It's actually with like the, I don't know, it's the one in Beaver Creek. So it would be at the front kind of where all the bags are at. And they make different colors too.
You don't happen to know what it's called on the package?
It's just Scotch tape.
Scotch tape.
Yeah, Scotch
It
tape.
is Scotch brand?
Yep.
Okay.
And it says masking tape, but it's in these kind of fun colors. So I'm not really sure what makes this tape different. Maybe they make it differently than the artist tape, but I've never had to worry about any tearing, and that's a
So do
big.
you reuse it?
I do. So I'll just have these like curls of tape all over the side of my shelf, and they're just hanging there. And my husband's like, "That? Why do you have that tape? Just go buy more." It's like, you know,
Just pretend it ain't there.
yeah, just don't look at it.
It's not one.
Right. So I won't take this home, but I'm tempted. But so once I have my kind of watercolor sky done, then I just go in and do sort of like contour drawings, which is kind of almost what got me started in doing birds, because I had one line drawing and it was a bird kind of like this at a show in Dayton. It's called the Dayton Sideshow. It's at the old yellow cab building. They have a bar there now, but they also do art shows in there with live music. And one girl saw it and she bought it, and she, after that, I don't know if you guys know her, Mikey Huber. After that, she opened so many doors for me. So I owe her a lot. And what ended up happening was she said, "Well, I know these two ladies at Front Street that are doing a show called Birds of a Feather. Maybe you can put some stuff in." So I ended up being the third artist in that show because of her just saying, "Hey, I know this new artist. She's never really shown anywhere." And this was back in maybe 2017 or so. So it hasn't been that long that I've been kind of out there doing things. So usually, again, I don't pre-draw anything. Sometimes I do. If someone wants a specific breed of bird, that kind of thing, I might research and just look up a picture, like a stock photo kind of thing. Or if I have my own photos, I'll try to look through mine first. Or if they have photos of a picture they've taken. But I always go with stock photos. I never go with just photos of what I find online because of all the trouble it can bring you. Kind of like Shepard Fairey with the Hope poster of Barack Obama. He got in lots of trouble for using someone else's photo. So I never do that. Not that I would ever be of that caliber, but I never do that. So I'm gonna go one step higher with my pen, and I'm gonna use the 01. This one is just gonna be a little bit thicker than the 005. Let's see. Yes. So the 01 it's still pretty thin, but my contour line drawings are never thought out. It's almost like how if you've ever had an art class or like do the 5-minute sketch and you just do it real fast. I think that tends to be, if I overthink things, it looks a little tight or stiff or something like that. And so I just prefer it to be looser looking. Not that there's anything wrong with someone that wants to be exact, but for my style, this is kind of how I do it. And you can see like there's not going to be any bleeding because it's this archival ink that kind of prevents anything from bleeding onto it. And this might end up in the artery, so I need some new work there, so it might be one of the things you might see.
So whimsical. That's what I love about what you do.
And sure, the proportions are not off, or probably completely off, but again, it comes across as a bird, I think. And there's probably a better way to do this, but again, you kind of have to try to find what works best for you and kind of the look you're going for.
Much fewer this way than draw with pencil.
Yeah, so I don't have to follow pencil marks. I don't have to erase anything afterwards. It's kind of like, it goes on so smoothly with these pens. Each pen is about $4, so they're kind of pricey, but they're worth it. You can find similar ones that are like half the price, but you'll have a lot of trouble with those because they'll bleed all over your watercolors. So that's the little birds. Kind of like that one. Yeah. And then sort of the last example that I'm going to do, I don't know if you guys can see the one over there, but I also have one up here. It's these little teeny tiny birds, and they're a lot of fun to do once you get the little shapes on, to go back in and see other shapes, or how in the heck is that little blob a bird. Sometimes I'll go in, and I don't do it very often or bring them to places, but I'll do like little robots. I know at the artery I have some plants and some mushrooms and other things like that, flowers. And But again, the birds seem to be what everyone likes, and I like doing them. So I'm going to do just a little one of the little birds. So I'm
Tell them what's the knowledge and stuff. A lot of people don't even know.
yeah, the artery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Color.
Yeah. So yeah, the artery is at Front Street, and I don't know if you guys have not been to Front Street. It is an artist hub in Dayton. You will find so many different kinds of artists there. There's musicians, there's ceramic artists, there's mask makers, and there's business owners that just do it as something fun. But the little co-op that I'm part of is on the 3rd floor by Mike Elsis, which is a great place to be located because he gets a lot of traffic. And Leonard and I are both part of the artery, and even inside of our little co-op you'll find 16 totally different artists. Everyone's so different there, but so I do recommend visiting Front Street if you've never been there. They'll have food trucks, and they do First Friday and Third Sunday. They'll have live music outside. There's 4 great big buildings to go visit. They have elevators, and I know Rosie, you've been part of the Front Street also, and it's kind of a Dayton art hub right now. Yeah. So usually with the small birds, I kind of just go down the line with all the colors. And maybe I'll start on this side and work my way over. Again, I usually go right to left because I'm a lefty, so I don't want to smear or smudge any of my colors, but I don't think it matters too much. And then, just like I did the bigger ones, I put my little drop of color in, and then I might add another color to it while it's still wet. Just the tiniest little drop like that. And then keep going around. I'll tend to not put the same color beside each other. And they end up being kind of these little blobs. But they'll dry, and then I'll be able to add all the legs and the beaks and all of that fun stuff.
So where did you get your idea for this?
So I was doing these little birds more realistically. So I would look up each sort of breed of bird. Say I wanted to do a starling, I would look up a starling, try to paint it to make it that shape and those colors and make it look similar. And I was getting a demand. So this is out of pure kind of pushing things out faster, to be honest with you. Rather than go back and keep doing each bird separately. It started at the Columbus Arts Festival. I think I took 30 pieces, and the people called me and said, we need more, like bring more. And so I did, and I had to pump out a lot in a short amount of time. And that was kind of how it got started. But I was always doing the birds in some way. Since I did the Birds of a Feather art show at Front Street, it's just they've gotten simpler. The designs are still as dynamic, I think, but the detail in the watercolor itself has simplified a lot. And I've switched over to ink because I realize I can get smaller, details with an ink pen than I can with a brush. So that was a big part of it. Yeah.
Have you ever done any other animal? Well, cats.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about trees, flowers? I wonder if you're moving to any other objects, things.
Yeah, I have. I brought a lot of samples over here. So I've done some strawberries for the strawberry festival. I've done plants. So
With ink too? as well?
with ink also, yes. And I don't know that I brought any of the plants with me, but I could always do one for you guys.
So I could see you abstracting a plant too.
Yeah,
Like a flower.
exactly. So, yeah, I have no problem showing you the plants that I've done. It's more like I'll do the drawing first, so it'll be super easy for me to show you. I just did a couple, but I left them at home because they are not framed and they are for somebody that bought them already. So usually I kind of do rows of plants. Maybe I'll pick like 4 different plants. And then I go right into drawing them and find the size I need. Nope, I got them all mixed up now. Okay, here it is. Usually I'll take like a ruler. That way I can kind of have them even, I guess. Like I don't have one giant plant and one small one. So I might go in and just do kind of like this type of drawing where it's just kind of like a spider plant type thing. And I'll look up like different breeds of plants. Maybe I like the Monstera. Those are really popular right now. So I'll go in and do one of those too. And this pen is just dying. So kind of like this, and I'll just go all the way across, maybe like 6 or 7 plants deep, 3 or 4 rows wide or deep and wide. And then once I get the drawing in, I'll go in with my watercolors and go right on top of the ink. So it'll be maybe like a little tiny bit there, a little bit there, kind of like that. Of course, I don't have my photo reference, or they would be much more detailed, and they would look more like the plant than they do right now. But that's kind of an example. I might even throw in other colors like purple or blue, you know, because I know in watercolor and other paintings, shadows are a lot of times are blue and purple, or, you know, as you guys know, getting those colors and shades can be difficult. So I usually don't have to worry about that with my paintings, though. So it's kind of nice. But did you guys have any other questions? And is there anything else you'd like me to draw for you? Yeah, absolutely.
Even though you're free-forming it, after you're finished, I see a pattern. I mean, do you, like, this one is, there's a diagonal, and this just being flat, that looks like a pattern too, the purple.
Yeah.
Do you see that as you're going along? Or do
Not usually. I just kind of start to fill things in anywhere.
Because it almost looks, I mean, I believe you, it almost looks
Yeah.
like you had it designed, and just your idea of the plants in a row, I never really thought of that.
I think it just comes from, do you ever go to like a nature center and you see the picture, the poster of all the kinds of birds, and it kind of reminds me of that, where you could put the name of each bird underneath and a little description. Kind of in that sense, kind of almost advertisement-like.
I believe you, but it looks, the colors are harmonious. I mean, it
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah,
just,
there's kind of an abstract quality about it.
Yes,
yes,
definitely.
but
It's
there's
almost,
a pattern.
yeah.
There's a coherence. I don't know.
And I like to call it maybe asemic or pareidolia, where you look at something and then you see the shape in it, or a semic where there's no meaning to it at all. So right now, there's no meaning to this really, and that's kind of how I paint until I add what other people can relate to, and that's the legs and the eyes and the beak. And then it becomes something else. So if this was just on its own, it might not be as intriguing, I think.
Do you mind if we invite people up to?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Hopefully I used up enough of your time. I was a little worried. Okay.
What I really like is the feet of the birds. They're very calligraphic, and also they remind me of shorthand.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of calligraphy in there. For sure.
And it's, just like painting styles, everyone's handwriting's a little different. I went to school for art.